count of how many participants would be here. So we have the slides. They are also online. They're a Google slide deck. You can access it themselves. You can just take a picture of that QR code. You should have the slide deck with you. It's been updated about 10 minutes ago, so it's hot off the press, so to speak. Okay, so my name is Min Khan. Everyone just calls me Min. I'm from NUS ALSET, which is a application of learning sciences and education technology. And I'll hand it right over to Chee and Longkai to introduce themselves. So, no? Yeah. Maybe you can introduce yourselves first. So,
I'm Chee. I'm from actually I'm a professor, and I think I also take a lot of appointment with NTU. So the center is CRADLE. It's the offset equivalent in NTU. It's a center for research and development into learning. So yeah, I look forward to you later.
I'm Mike from OER NIE. So I'm doing some work, doing some field work in AI. So I think the opportunity to share data today.
Okay, anyone have any problems with the links, especially the slide links? Can you get to them on your device? Yes? Okay. Great. So the agenda we have is as follows. We're going to go through basically a first hour of just slide presentations, but as with all teachers, I think, we would prefer more of a dialogue and discussion, but although lecturers hope that's the case, usually it ends up being just broadcast only, but please feel free to interrupt. We're going to try to go over a broad basis of how ITS works, the terminologies that are involved, and maybe if we have time, some meta-analysis and case studies, and Longkai will present a demonstration of a particular ITS that's very popular. It's called Auto Tutor. Many of you probably have heard of it already. Okay. And in the second hour, it depends on the timing again. The most important thing for us as facilitators of this workshop is to hear from you. This is why I think Hansel and Eka had sent out an email to all of you asking you to give your inputs. Okay. So if you have slides, you can connect to Zoom, and then we'll just switch over to you on Zoom, and then you can present from your seat in the comfort of your Surface or your HP laptop or whatever, and tell us what's going on in your unit. Okay, so after that, we'll wrap up, and the conversation definitely doesn't stop there. This is, again, envisioned as the first of several different consultancies. We're planning to have this first workshop to get some feedback from you and to put everyone on the same page first. And then after that, probably Longkai, Chee and myself will visit each of the different CPDD units, as well as other interested parties within MOE to try to figure out what's the placement of ITS in a proper environment for SLS for your particular curriculum. Okay. So I'm actually from the computer science department, and I don't know anything about education, although I'm appointed in the Learning Institute. So pardon me when I get the terminology wrong. I hope you'll be forgiving of that. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to recap what we talked about in the Learning Analytics workshop that were from the feedback that we had in December. So some of you were probably there. I remember seeing a couple faces in which CPTD initiated a workshop that talked about learning analytics. We also recorded that. That's also on YouTube, so you may have gotten the link to see that before. The slides are also available. Okay, and basically we had Abeledo Pardo from the Society of Learning Analytics Research give an overview talk about what learning analytics is. And I think the key insight from there is that in order for learning analytics to serve any purpose, we as educators need to know what questions we want learning analytics to address. Okay, if we go put in analytics and capture clicks, downloads, views, incorrect answers, and everything like that, we have no idea what it's useful for, it's a white elephant. Okay, we can invest all of that time in infrastructure, but if it doesn't meet the needs of our students, it's useless. Okay, so many times we think, okay, learning analytics can give a lot of insight into our students, but really, for most teachers, they know their students fairly well. Learning analytics may not help them with that could be actually a burden to them, right? Because now they have to look at yet another source of information. This is very critical at the very outset when we're designing a learning analytics system, of which ITS could be one component, that we know what we want to do with it. Okay, and so for that session, in the, I think the last 30 minutes or so, we had a set of things that we wanted you to think about. And so we said, what are the things that we could think about? Okay, what are the dimensions of thought we could think about for learning analytics? Like, who is the stakeholder, right, over here? Are we talking about immediate feedback for the learner to get through? Or are we talking about feedback to the curriculum planner about how to restructure the curriculum or the term time? Okay, is it going to be done in situ in the class? You know, you're going to use these exercises in class, or is it going to be group or individual offline as project work? We talked about the workflow. Okay, would there be an AI to intervene on your behalf, or this would be something to augment the capabilities of a teacher, or some type of hybrid where both the student and the teacher co-experience the learning analytics. Okay, and this is the compiled feedback that we got from that workshop. So I'm just going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes on this. Okay, so we looked at several different groups. We looked at English education unit, mother tongue, I think, as well as math, these 3 units, and we asked them all these questions. Okay, so the questions that we got back from all of you is that still, I don't think we're very clear about what we want from our learning analytics, because the questions that you can see here are still fairly general. Okay, so the hope is through this workshop and then the subsequent engagement is to drill down. What does it mean? How can the student do better? What does it mean? How do we assess what the child knows, what he or she doesn't know? Okay, and then what type of activities would a learner want to do, right? It definitely varies per curriculum, right? It depends on which primary level or secondary level. It depends on the curriculum subject matter, okay? Maybe we want the system to even recommend other content that has already been structured and figure out a good ordering for the student, right? So we tried to make this a little bit more concrete. We said, for, let's say, a primary 3 student or teacher, okay, my son is a primary 3 student, he's in UT primary. So what type of data would we want, right? How long did it take a child to respond to a particular question in a digital environment? How many wrong choices did they make? Maybe we could ask the children to self-report. We could provide them with some type of feedback or reinforcement without using grades. I think that's definitely on the minister's agenda. Figuring out for a teacher who's actually delivering the curriculum, what is more challenging, which parts of the subject matter is more challenging. Okay, what type of exercises they prefer, and what type of scaffolding can we do? You know, we will eventually want to remove all the scaffolds so that the student can accomplish the entire work on themselves. So which ordering of the scaffolds do I do? Okay. We also asked about how would we want to implement it? How would we roll it out? Okay, and then with the feedback that we got from this part of the discussion was more on 2 different parts, not so much about how we implement it, because those are technical issues, but what are the surrounding issues? Okay, so on policy, how would we help from the top down structure the policy to enable such learning analytics to take place, right? And are there any issues in collecting data, like from a privacy point of view, sharing with beyond the teacher group to the principal group or to parents? What do we need to deal with there? Okay. And also thinking about the stakeholders in terms of policy, right? So principals, administrators, and parents, these are all different stakeholders besides the students and teachers. And a good learning analytics framework should be able to cater for all of these, or at least have considerations for that. Okay. So I'd like you to think about this in terms of what we're going to talk about this afternoon, because all of these things are different levels of priority. Of course, we want everything for everyone, but that's not tenable, right? Especially for a case where we are embarking on a journey of putting learning analytics or intelligent tutoring systems in place, right? So instead of thinking of all of these at once, I'd like you to think about the priorities that you think your units want to set, the could be with the students, it could be with the teachers, it could be with the principals, okay? You have to decide, maybe it's yourselves as CPDD officers, what you want the learning analytics to accomplish and who is going to collect that data for you. Okay, like I said before, when we have learning analytics, we can capture all the data, but if we don't have an objective, we don't know what to do with that data, it's still beating a dead horse, okay? In order for it not to be a white elephant, we need to make it the outcomes actionable, right? So we can think of different stakeholders again, right? On the bottom here, what a teacher needs to do to reconsider their teaching in light of that data. How do you put it in your regular evaluation and reflection cycle, okay? But also for the students, right? Do they do it right away? Do they do it after a set of lessons or after the term time? Or is it something that you're going to have the parents reinforce or reapply? Okay, and how do you get to the point where the communication is done in the right way? Because underperforming students, when they see this type of reflection back on their dashboard, it can be not underwhelming, it can be overwhelmingly stressful, right? We know that metricing our students can provide a lot of stress, right? Okay, so we need to make sure that we understand what role learning analytics play. Okay, so that led to today's workshop. After that workshop, we had a short session. In fact, it was mentioned by CPDD, by Kenneth, that we want to engage in a further iteration, not just of learning analytics in general, because it's just a framework, but to think about a particular intervention. And that's why we have this particular intervention workshop today on intelligent tutoring systems. So intelligent tutoring systems, Chee will explain what it is. But basically, we are going to go through all of these different concepts that you have fed back to us are important for you. Okay, so with that, I think my part is largely over. Okay, and we'll talk now. I'll hand over the floor to Chee to go through the terminology.
So, good afternoon to all of you. So coming to this place was a bit of a surreal experience. So it was a whole school compound. I never imagined coming here to give a talk. I probably was a pre-U student sitting there many decades ago. So, so I'm here to introduce to you ITS. So it's ITS 101 brief tutorial. Introduce to you the terms used in ITS, the main concepts behind the terms used in ITS. And then we demo to show you one of the ITS. So intelligent tutoring systems, they are computer learning environments to help students learn some knowledge and skills. And they use AI, use intelligent algorithms to help to adapt the learner to, and usually ITS work at a very fine-grained level. So later, as you see some examples, they work at a very fine-grained level. They're trying to background student understanding and provide appropriate remedial instruction. So the key words are adapt to the learner. And ITS normally works with one student at a time. So it's usually one-to-one because you try to understand the students' perceptions, misconceptions. So it's done at an individual level, and helping students to learn. And you know that learners have different levels of mastery, certain deficits in knowledge. You take a deficit model and different profiles of cognitive and non-cognitive attributes. Non-cognitive attributes could be like engagement level, motivation level. So ITS performs tutoring. Just like imagine a one-to-one tutor. Engage in a dialogue, also receive questions from the student and try to answer those questions, and also offering prompts to promote reflection. So what a personal tutor would do. So you're trying to get the machine to do some of these tasks. And in order to do all this, it tries to build a model of the student. So what you call a learner model, a student model, more generally, in computer science, you know about user model. So this model contain many kinds of information. So contains knowledge, skills. Let me try that. Is that pointer again?
Yeah, good.
Top one. Okay. So a learner model can contain a lot of information, a lot of variables. It could be a learner's engagement, persistence. How persistent is the student in trying to work on some problem? It could also take into account non-invasive measures, the gaze, the eye, the gaze, looking at the computer screen where the gaze is, body posture. Also be physiological measures, for example, the sweat, emotions, motivation, many more. So we try to construct this model and use model to come back to adapt the tutoring. So there's this loop of tutoring. And in order to do the tutoring, it constructs a model of the student. So, so why is that important? One-to-one tutoring, why is that important to have one-to-one tutoring? You look at this chart, it compares one-to-one tutoring, tutor students with classroom students. Classroom students means like a situation like this, a teacher, instructor teaching to a large group. So you can see in terms of achievement based on the room do a kind of meta-analysis. It shows that in general, if you have one-to-one tutoring, it improves 2 standard deviation. And that's if you're in statistics, you know it's a big deal to improve 2 standard deviation of the achievement of the classroom students. So now you know why, in Singapore we have a very booming home tuition business. So there's evidence to show that personal tutoring helps, because you look at the research evidence, 2 sigma improvement, good one-to-one tutoring. Okay, so in order to do this tutoring, you need to have information on the learner, right? So develop a model of the learner. So there are many characteristics of the learner that you can track before the learning, during learning, after the learning. So there are many variables, right? You can track, and how do we use these variables to maintain this set of variables, right? Maintain set of variables. So these are the practical problems, challenges to building these systems. And then there's also a mapping problem. Some of these variables are very theoretical, engagement, motivation. And then you try to map to something that's operational by computer code. So that's kind of challenging, operational by the computer. How do the computer react to this delta, these changes in all these variables? And also there's a computational problem. There's so many of these variables, right? And there's so many complex interactions among these variables. So it creates a kind of combinatorial explosion. On the other hand, we say that humans are good at what they're doing. Computers should be good at what they're doing. So computers now compute very fast. So it's possible to use computer to do this. So to build a learner model, you faces these problems. So you rely on the computer to do what they're good at, tracking a lot of these variables. But then also you come back to the human teacher instructor. Human teacher instructor may not have all these variables in their mind, right? When it provides effective teaching. So you remember the best teacher, right? I don't think that teacher has so many of your variables in her mind to try to adapt the instruction. So there's a difference between how human tutors work and how we might exploit a computer to build a very powerful tutor. So we can learn from each other. So because of this adaptation, this adaptive behavior is much better than conventional computer-based learning systems. It's much better because computer-based learning systems, you read this point, it basically give you a quiz, a multiple choice test. Depending on your answer, it will branch you off. You're not good in that particular area. It will give you remedial instruction in that area. So it does it at a very high level of granularity. So for ITS, you want to move beyond that and get into a lower level of granularity so that it's more effective in the teaching.
So this is a table from this report, Intelligence Unleashed. Okay, so it shows that in this ITS, there are these different models. So we have a pedagogical model, domain model, and a learner model. Okay, maybe I'll come back to this slide later. Let me move on to. Okay, so this is the components of an intelligent tutoring system. So just now we talked about the learner model, right? So we have some component that helps build this student model. And then you also have the knowledge domain, the domain model. So this is I think the curriculum map that the CPD colleagues talked to us in an earlier meeting. You know, how do you map the curriculum? You know, what's the sequencing? How do you plan the curriculum over at a very high level perspective? So these are the kind of knowledge you want to teach the student. So that's a knowledge. And then you have the teaching strategies. So you have teaching strategies to adapt, understand the student, adapt, and teach using this knowledge. So there's some kind of user interface, tailor instruction, so it's adaptive. So students' knowledge estimate, that means you try to assess, try to estimate, diagnose the student's understanding. Okay, so you see the learner model.
You can also try pointing with the cursor, because that will be captured.
Oh, okay. So the learner model. So there are different ways you can build a learner model. A typical one would be the deficit model, right? You have a domain model. These are the facts, the knowledge that you should learn in this lesson, this curriculum. So overlay model means a subset or overlay of this domain model. So a student will learn only a subset of the expert, the planned curriculum model. So your job as an instructor, as a teacher, is eventually to get them to understand that your learner model to be like the expert, the curriculum model. So that's a learner model. And then you have the tutor model. So you could also incorporate some kind of tutoring strategies to teach the student. So tutoring strategies could be providing hints, providing the next steps. You can think all the different problem strategies. You can get peer help. You can provide a kind of a high-level hint, kind of meta-cognitive hint without talking about the domain. So different tutoring strategies. Just now there was the domain model. So how do you represent the curriculum in a form that can be operationalized by ITS? So you can represent expert knowledge. Expert knowledge is basically the curricular knowledge, the knowledge you want to teach to the student. Then I'll come on to these aspects of expert model. Okay. So yeah, this is another view of the architecture. So you have the domain model, learner model, pedagogy, and then you have algorithms to process the knowledge presented in the models. So what do you choose from the domain model? It's on inputs the learner model, and what pedagogy do you use to adapt the content for the student, adapt the content, and then capture. In return, you present to the student. In return, you want to capture the student's interactions with the behavior, the learning. So the data capture. So very much of learning analytics capture all this, and then you try to analyze it and use it to adapt the instruction. So I want to raise this. I want to show you this diagram because there's an important part that's called open learner model. Because I did see CVD colleagues also mentioned open learner model. I'll show you. So open learner model is so it's a student model, right? It's a learner model. So all these topics and skills, you can think of some meters that show how well they perform in this. Could be a novice, could be you're starting to learn it, and then you could be expert. So a kind of indicator of where you stand in your understanding of this domain. So the idea of open learner model is instead of using it all by the system, I throw it back to you so that you can become self-aware of this is what the ITS tell me I understand of my understanding. Throw it back so that you become more self-aware and you can reflect on your own understanding. Why did I score so low on this particular topic? Why why they score so high, get you to reflect, and because of that you can learn. And also, you can also try different pedagogical strategies. The student may not agree that why you judge me so low on this topic X. Give me a task that shows that I actually can perform better than that. So you can actually use an open learner model to try different pedagogies. Okay, so in terms of trying to think about how to do diagnosis, let's get something very basic at the school level, subtraction. So, how do you build an intelligent tutoring system for teaching subtraction? So, how do you make use of the power of a computer to build a tutor to teach subtraction? So, you, for example, computer generate numbers, right? You don't have to predefine all the prompt sums, generate the numbers, and the computer himself can do the subtraction, right? So, you can use a few minutes to think about how would you build a tutor using subtraction. You're separated, but I think you can talk to the person next to you. You can put in pairs and just sort of say some of you to think about this first.
Can you take a question?
Yes.
Yeah, on the previous slide, right? So some of us have read Intelligence Unleashed, but the dotted lines are not quite explained in that publication.
Okay. Oh, you have seen this publication, right?
Yeah. Next slide.
Okay.
So the dotted lines joining the left side of the problem. So it is not quite explained. I wonder why.
For the feedback, is it? I think this is the adaptive loop, right? So you present content. That's how I understand it. You present content. Look how the student respond to it. You could be solving some problems with data capture, and then analyze the data. So this is the.
I'm wondering whether the pedagogy model is like it's good to have it, but it's not essential because it's dotted lines. So
Oh, this one.
Yeah, you notice there are border lines, the solid lines on the right are dotted on the left. So I want to why.
Oh, okay. So pedagogy. So it's like you have a store of pedagogies. Then you pick from this store of pedagogies what you want to apply to.
So we're wondering whether in ITS that the pedagogy model may be optional.
Oh no. It cannot be optional. It's a very important component.
So if you don't have the learner model, if you don't have the open learner model, you can't loop back and change the pedagogies based on that.
Right. Dotted lines are for understanding how the reflection by students, learners, and administrators, the stakeholders, feed back into, let's say, for CPDD, right? That's the domain model, or for the pedagogy model, for people in research to say, how do I teach this subject? Okay. So that's closing the loop. There's an inner loop, which is the feedback, which is the solid line, right? That one is the automated feedback that the system, right? Let's say the student makes a mistake, then the system is saying, oh, well, I think you're not so strong on this. Let me offer you another video or another assessment to better calibrate. So that loop is internal to the automatic feedback of the ITS. Right. The outer dotted line is, our policy and processes as a human, right? To say, how do parents feedback to CPDD, or how do teachers or students feedback to the research on pedagogy.
Right. Okay.
So that part is definitely optional. I think no one in the world has really closed that loop as well as they want to, right? But it is, the goal of ITS and learning analytics in general is to take data that's manufactured as a byproduct of learning, right? And then feed that back in as research so that we can understand how this 2 sigma takes place, right? And then we can recommend, with data, evidence-based education, how to do ITS, how to do pedagogy.
Right. That's a good perspective. So there's an inner cycle, right? So that cycle is the ITS doing its computation, automated kind of instruction.
Right.
The After cycle is where I think learning ethics come in. You collect data on how these ITS perform in teaching students and use that learning ethics to improve the ITS after all these tutoring sessions.
So just to double check your understanding, because it's always good to have. This is back to the audience, right? Okay. So on that last diagram, there was a solid arrow on the right to the learner model and the domain model, meaning that the data analysis that's being done by the ITS is feeding back to those two models. Why is it not feeding back to the pedagogy model? Anyone want to take a stab why? There's no solid line to the pedagogy model.
Sounds like the pedagogy models are coded. Is that why?
Yeah, so when we think about pedagogy, it's our theory about teaching, right? And those theories don't change very fast, right? Even though technology is changing quite rapidly, right? So, I mean, ideally, we would want it also to include that. That's why there's this dotted arrow from the data analysis back out to the pedagogy model. But clearly, right now, most systems, most automated systems, have no influence on the way we teach. Right? Certainly, that would be nicely and desired. And similarly, you can see that the open learner model doesn't currently feed to the learner model itself, right? Because the data analytics are capturing what we know about the learner, so that's already done. So that's why there's no dotted arrow from the open learner model all the way back to the learner model, correct? Does that help you to clarify the difference between the dotted and the solid line?
Yeah, something like hard-coded. Most ITS take on a certain instructional pedagogical approach. So it's kind of implicit in the system. It doesn't allow you to choose the pedagogy. So the pedagogy could be like in mathematics problem solving, right? Once you deviate from the canonical way of doing it, it quickly bring you back. You don't want to get in a mess, Once you deviate a little bit, you bring you back. So it's a kind of pedagogical strategy, right? And it's like reducing the load on the working memory. So there's some kind of principles behind it. So that could be a pedagogy. The second level to improve the pedagogy, there are some research attempts to do that. I think, but that's a bit challenging for us.
Sorry, to add on to the part about the pedagogy model being, so that's to say if the MOE decides to go to develop the ITS, and then I feel that my subject and legal subject are totally different, I cannot accept this model.
Yes.
Then it means that we have to cut ourselves into two different ITS.
Yes, that's right. You need a different pedagogical model, yeah. So
the implication for us is all of us must agree on one pedagogy model.
no, I think you can have different pedagogical models. Yeah, different subjects. The pedagogies are quite different, right? Especially the social sciences with the sciences. That's it. Yeah.
So I think definitely the ITS system admits that there are different pedagogical methods for different subject matters. If you design a ITS modular enough, say, mix and match. Okay. But ultimately, it usually doesn't turn out to be such easy things like, okay, take one from set A and then plug it into set B, because there are tight bindings into the way you want to teach a subject. But there's a lot of customization, but a good ITS may have those modules pre-baked, but you would need to make quite a lot of customization to make it work for your domain and your content, right? So Singaporean math is quite different from US math. And so if you were to import an ITS from the US, like the Carnegie tutors, they may be teaching it in a different language, right? You may want to change that.
I want to get on that point. So that means all these components are intricately linked. So you cannot plan the curriculum map by itself. You must see how you diagnose students' understanding, how you teach. So all these intricate link, and that will affect how you map up the curriculum. So that's another response to what you said.
Can I just challenge this notion that the pedagogy model doesn't change so rapidly? In the last maybe 30 years or so, there's a lot of importing of different pedagogy models among so many different subjects. And so when we teach mathematics, for example, so people may think about it as problem solving.
Yes.
Can we teach you problem solving? So there's a pedagogy around it. But how you engage the students in these has changed indeed. And so typically in math, people might say, let me show you an example. I teach you a concept or skill, show you an example. Now you do. Right? So that's the kind of pedagogical model that was quite typical and for a long time subscribed to. But today it is quite a different set. People were asked to talk about it, consider different ways of doing it, and so on and so forth. Instead of just that, let me show you a method for this, give you a similar example, there you go. So even in a subject that is actually quite, what should I say, conservative, like mathematics, actually even that has changed. And so how does that, I can't reconcile with the fact that, I mean, not a fact, but this idea that it doesn't change.
You're talking about a human tutor. The human tutor has all this flexibility, depending on the topic, to adapt, to use different approaches.
So that means
we haven't reached that. The machine has not reached there.
Yeah. So whatever ideas we are making, we're creating, then is actually going back to a cave.
I think what we're saying here is that the solid lines are must-haves, okay, and that the dotted lines are nice to have. Right? We would like our ITS and our data analytics to inform how we teach, and definitely we do that. I mean, OER is doing that, NIE is doing that, all of you at OER are doing that. But it's not something that's a tight coupling or a tight loop. Right? We have to propose research grants, we have to execute research and studies, all for that to happen. But you consider some of the modern ITSs like big quantum methods. They can close this loop very quickly because they're accumulating data all the time, and they can execute that. And so that's what we want to get from an ITS or any learning analytics platform, is to close the circle and to make it very tightly coupled with evidence. Right? Because we can run all these studies in controlled laboratories, but it takes a long time because it's a publication cycle, and MOE has to go through the policy, and then it has to go top down and on top. So it takes a time. So that's what I meant by that. It's not to belittle the change that has happened. Thank you.
So building these ITS are very expensive matters. So for 1 hour instruction, you estimated you need 200 to 300 hours to produce the 1 hour instruction, much more than a conventional CAI. So for the topics in mathematics, you pick a topic like geometry. Right? There's a lot of consensus on how best you can teach geometry theorem proving. Then you can build ITS that can teach us that geometry theorem proving very well, or for algebraic equation solving. So you can't be an ITS that teach a broader scope of mathematics because you need different kind of approaches. I think that's what you're alluding to. Yeah.
So in this case, the data will iteratively improve the learner model and the domain model continuously. That's simple by the machine. But the data doesn't flow to the pedagogy model. So the pedagogy model, in terms of evolution or changes, is really slower than if it exists.
Yeah, at the current state of the art, you need the human to come in to interpret this and go and tweak the pedagogical model. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if I thought about it, but there's actually one approach to teach subtraction. You look at these problems. What problem is the student having? So 5 subtraction problems. What problem is the student having? So as ITS, you need to diagnose the understanding. How do you diagnose the understanding?
These are addition problems, by the way.
Oh, sorry, addition problems. Addition problems. Oh, sorry, addition problems. So it's not subtraction, it's addition, correction. So the ITS will give this set of addition problems as students. You don't correct this answer. How do you diagnose the answer? What problem the student is having? What's the problem?
Reaching the 4 digits.
Sorry.
Yeah, when it reaches the 3 more digits, I think that's the most
Okay, yeah. Getting close to that.
error.
Yeah. So these students' errors is not random, you know. There's kind of explanation for these errors. You're curriculum people actually. Okay, you see there's a kind of you add one more, right? Or something like that. Yeah. I think that's what you're saying, yeah. So if you discover the fundamental problem, what you call a bug, the bug is borrowed from computer software, you know, the error that messes things up. So if you discover the bug, then you try out new problems. Does it work? So the ITS will give a new set of problems to the student to confirm that this is the bug they are having. So give you these problems. So you use the third to fourth place, you repeat it there. So actually the problem is, can I tell you? The problem is when the student add, right, there's a carry. The carry over, right? The student does not reset the carry. The carry is still always there. So at the third place, digit place, fourth digit place, they still use the carry to add to it. You see there's a carry of 1, right? The next digit, you add one more, there's a carry of 1. But it doesn't reset the carry to 0. So you can read the first few lines. So there's a carry register, right? The student didn't set it to 0. Hence, the bug explains the student's answers to the math problems. So I show this to convey that how can we build intelligent algorithms to help diagnosis. So we can make some assumptions. Assumptions is students do not follow procedures very blindly. They may follow a procedure, but a procedure is incorrect. So that procedure is a bug. So it's really trying to understand the fundamental misconceptions behind the problem solving. So this is an example of subtraction. Addition. Yeah.
So it seems like the ID, the bug, it seems like the system do a series of A/B testing, try and error, kind of figure out what the bug. But the explanation as to why this bug occurs as to the cause of it, which is estimated here, it's not generalized.
Yeah, you raise a good point. Yeah.
The system don't explain why this is so.
Yeah. How they develop the bug is a bit, maybe we could try to remediate that, but they try to get ITS to cope, maybe beyond ITS. Right. So that's a good point. So what I want to raise is you can take a skill like addition or subtraction and decompose it all into all the individual sub-steps. You see a sequence of different skills, steps in doing subtraction or addition. And some of these steps could be a kind of a bug version, a mild version of that step. So you can be a tutor to teach subtraction by decomposing into all the sub-steps. So in subtraction, for example, a student may not know how to subtract a bigger digit or smaller digit. They may just take the difference, right? So 2 subtract 9, they can just put 7. So that's very feasible, right? Someone who's trying to learn borrow may not have reached that stage. They'll just take a difference. So a tutor or that will try to pick up these errors by decomposing the skills, the possible sub-steps, and try to develop typical parts of the sub-steps that a student would take on. And in this process, try to reproduce the student's behavior by running through these steps. Yeah. This is a very simple example of subtraction, but the general approach is kind of illustrative of how computer algorithms try to unpack the kind of misconceptions behind a student's work, or solving a math problem or a physics problem.
So does it mean that for arithmetical subtraction, is like not able to rename part of the number? So does it mean that for every sum I must think of different misconceptions.
Yeah.
So
If you
we
take this
have to
approach.
predict what kind of the different, let's say for one question I must have a different prediction of what kind of errors that the student
Yeah, that's right. So there come of two sources. One is from the experienced teachers, right? One is from data. So that's where learning analytics come in. So experienced teachers, right, will know that a lot of kind of misconceptions, the way that the students thinking might deviate from the canonical way.
I have to come up with this map.
This map is standard. This is the map for doing subtraction. So use this map to diagnose any students' answers to the same set of questions. And then you can figure out. Yes. Yeah. So it's a very laborious process, very expensive to be ITS.
That's for the 200, 300 hours.
Yeah. This one's very low level, but you can assume that the granularity goes up. The kind of bugs may not be at this low level, maybe at a higher level. Yeah.
But it's important to also illustrate these scaffold. Like for one semester, you might start with general problems, right? And then as you refine your data and you see that learners are making a specific type of mistake, that they are always executing in a large cohort. So you take all the P3 students in Singapore, put them through this ITS, right? And you can see, oh, how come there are like 1,000 students all making this type of error? Because they're all provided with the same model, right? The same problem. Then it's easy to diagnose. So these types of learning analytics comes from the scale of the data that's provided. Like if you go back to MOOCs, right? Andrew Ng, who offered the machine learning course, he said he was able to pick up these types of bugs from Looi because he had the scale of data. The data supported him to understand why the students were making. So it may not be that we know all the misconceptions we have right now. But hopefully, after we start to close the cycle, the ITS can be modified and be alerted to those things. But of course, the more detailed your mapping is, and the more fine-grained, the more helpful it can be, right? Like human tutors will, many times if they're subject matter experts, be able to identify it.
Yeah, thanks. So there's a role for data mining to help to develop this. So this is one approach to developing an intelligent tutoring system. There's a student diagnosis, right? Yeah. So how do you model the student? Just now I explained that the overlay model. You have a map, the overlay of the map. So the curriculum map, all the notes, so the student's model will be an overlay of the domain knowledge. And then a buggy model would be a kind of the map itself, but also correct and incorrect rules or concepts. So diagnosis means to figure out a combination of these correct and buggy rules that can mimic the student's answers. Okay, so as you know, you require a very extensive taxonomy of student errors. So that's why it's expensive to build. But it's a one-time cost. You build it, you can reach up to hundreds of students. And okay, so the student model, a lot of the work is on how to do student diagnosis. So the different types of intelligent tutoring systems are really based on how they do the student model, the student diagnosis. So the first one is Bayesian model tracing. So they use Bayesian methods to estimate the probability that you master this concept or skill. So you map the curriculum into some kind of a network, Bayesian network, and then use Bayesian a network that use Bayesian to compute probabilities of student mastering. Constraint-based modeling, Bayesian network modeling, and then expectation and misconception tailoring. So I want to talk about this. This one is the expectation. It's a bit similar to the subtraction filter. So you can use this in other subjects, like you can use it in a kind of dialogue kind of tutoring session. When the tutor talks to the student, you have certain expectation of the kind of responses which will be acceptable. So based on those expectations, you can conduct dialogues. Or you just show a certain misconception, you could retrieve certain remedial instruction to tailor the instruction to the student. So just now, after the auto tutor will be using this approach to do the ITS. I think I don't touch this. It's a bit involved now, but okay, there's some examples of this. So the knowledge tracing. So it's used in the mathematics tutors in the Pittsburgh area. So it's reached a lot of high schools. And the way they do it is to use production rules to try to replicate the students' problem-solving behavior. So production rules are like, if then else rules, the kind of rules that were very popular in the days of the expert systems. So what kind of rules use the rules as a kind of model to the students' understanding. So that's basically knowledge tracing. So and they use it to build tutors for algebra, geometry, theorem proving. They're very successful in the US high schools in the Pittsburgh area. Constraint-based modeling.
So I can say a little bit about the slides if you don't mind. So for ITSs, they have several different modes. Okay, so Chee just presented on the previous slide 4 different modes. And I think the key to thinking about these is how your curriculum fits into that. Okay, so I like to think of like the knowledge tracing as a pathway to learning. Okay, meaning that a learner has to go through a series of steps to arrive at an answer. Right. So when we think of math, that's very much the case. It's procedural, right? There are certain steps that you follow. You know which steps to take to get to the answer. Okay? Whereas a constraint modeling is a different approach. It thinks of the destination. Okay, so you've heard this quote. It's the journey that matters, not the destination, right? So in the basic knowledge tracing, it's the journey. It's the steps that make the solution valid. Okay? In the constraint-based modeling, it's the destination. Okay? Meaning that a solution is something that specifies how all of the parts of the solution relate to each other in a constrained fashion. Okay? It doesn't matter how you get there. So the path that you take to getting to the solution, for example, a science experiment where you have to get a circuit working, like let's say a fan. Okay? Doesn't matter which step you carry out first. All right? But the end result is the circuit must work to make the fan turn on. Right? So there are many ways you can do it, but the way we diagnose in an ITS that a constraint modeling system breaks, because we look at the constraints that a solution, a valid solution has. Okay, that the battery must be connected, the fan must be connected, etc. Okay, and we say, where does this the solution, the buggy one that the student provides, where does it go wrong? All right. So when the constraint is broken, then that is the opportunity to fix. Okay. So there's this difference between the path and the destination. Does that make sense? So in some of the work areas that we do for teaching, it will be procedural. There are certain steps that you must carry out in a codified order to make the solution appear. Right? In other domains, there is no particular ordering of the steps. You just need to have the solution, have a particular constraint. Okay? So these are the different ways that we can think of the pedagogy model being invoked when we build an ITS. So you as the audience for CPDD and elsewhere, think about the domain where you're coming from. Is it a procedural thing that you're trying to teach that are codified steps? Okay, and then doing those steps are important? Or is it the holistic end result that matters? You know, for example, a lot of STEM is procedural, a lot of humanities is holistic. More the destination side. Okay?
I think that's a great point. Yeah. So the first one is step-by-step tutoring. You only check each step at a time. The second one is you produce an artifact. The student produces an artifact. And it could be a science model, could be a concept map. You take the artifact and analyze it for what kind of constraints it may have violated. Yeah. And then there are other ITS using knowledge space models. This one is very similar to the first one, the knowledge space models. And expectation and misconception is very good for natural language dialogue. Anything to add?
Yeah, so the knowledge-based model, like Chee said, is similar to the first one where it's more path-based. But instead of expressing steps, we express the states that the learner can be in. Okay, so not the actual steps, but what types of cognitive states could they be in? Like having the misconception that the carry doesn't need to be reset would be a particular state. Okay, so this approach sometimes works better, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how much knowledge you need to code. Sometimes it's easier to code a single step that could really relate to many states, or it could be that you want to code a state because there are many pathways, many steps to get to, right? Whichever one takes less work is the one that you want to do, right? Because if you have to say, oh, well, there's 50 different ways I could arrive at this state, and you're telling me I need to produce all 50 rules for that, that's a lot of work, right? On the other hand, if you tell me that there is 50 different states that one rule could produce, that's also a lot of work if you're doing it for 3 hours, okay? So this is why there's this difference between number 3 and number 1. It depends again on the different ways that the learner can produce actions to result in, okay? And then the 4th one, I think we're going to see an example of that from Longkai, which is the auto tutor, where it's supposed to be a system that you converse in natural language. So the user is supposed to type in a response, or maybe at some future state, we'll use speech recognition. So the person can speak using their phone or a microphone and be automatically recognized and then converse as with a one-on-one tutor.
Yeah, thanks, Minian. So I almost done with the intro ITS. Let me come back to the earlier chart that I say I'll hold back. This one, yeah. So the right-hand side. So pedagogical model. So some examples of the kind of knowledge you can represent in these models. Productive failure, feedback, different kind of feedback, questions, hints, haptics, trigger actions, assessment to inform and measure learning. So these are examples of the pedagogical model. Then the domain model, you can see there are different kind of skills, adding, subtracting, fractions, Newton's second law, causes of World War I. So all these different topics. And then knowledge of the learner. Learner model is where the diagnosis I was going through in these few slides. So far, I've been talking about diagnosis of students' knowledge state. There are also kind of different kinds of student diagnosis. Could be emotional state, engagement, grit, perseverance. So some of the ITS they measure that. After how many attempts do you give up? So how often do I show you a hint? And you may just play the game, right? Keep hitting until the system give up and reveal the answer. So actually, there are also ITS that looks at all these different behaviors. Okay, so I'm going to show you a demo of auto tutor. So auto tutor is a 4th type ITS, as Minian said. So it conducts a dialogue with the student. So it does a lot of natural language processing, which is quite an achievement in computer science because try to understand the student's answers, make sense out of it. So it starts with a question. So I guess this is a kind of physics topic, right? And you pose this question task to the student and wait for the student to respond in some natural language. So then you match it. Is it one of the expectations that you have planned for, or one of the misconceptions? So your expectations, then if the student is kind of getting a feel of the problem, getting the right way, you might try to provide some hints or prompts, such as this. If students is a bit deviating, so you might try to also provide hints and prompts to bring him back. So you can read this kind of a student response by the system. So it goes on and on. It's a dialogue fashion. And auto tutor has been used in a few domains, different domains. One is on teaching digital computer literacy. One is on electronic circuits. So these are the different kind of curriculum maps that's in auto tutor in different domains. I think that's what you're interested in, right? When you first had this conversation, how do you plan your curriculum? How do you map out the curriculum? To prerequisite relationship or what? So I think that one point is to raise, to repeat the point I mentioned earlier, it cannot be decided on its own. You must also see how you teach, how you do diagnosis, and at what level granularity. So let me show the demo. But before that, there's a kind of video on how this tutor. So this tutor has a kind of pedagogical strategy. You know, I am a student, I interact with a tutor, right? And it's not just the two of us, there's a third guy. Now, what is this third guy doing? This third guy is a computer agent, avatar. It is a kind of a learning companion. I know EDD has been talking about learning companion, right? So he's a real learning companion. So you learn in the triad, there's a tutor, and then there's a learning companion, and then I'm the real human learner. So I can learn from how this model student, the learning companion learns. You know, I can learn from. And sometimes the tutor will argue with this learning companion, create some cognitive conflict. And then I listen and why are they arguing and try to resolve it. So,
Auto Tutor enhances reading by providing a unique learning environment that can adapt to the abilities of the user compared to traditional teaching methods. Two digital agents hold three-way conversations with the adult learner and help them to navigate the online experience. Christina is the tutor agent and is the instructor.
Hi, Kenya and Jordan. My name is Christina and I'll be your instructor for this activity.
Jordan is a peer student agent and learns with the digital agents hold three-way conversations with the adult learner and help them to navigate the online experience. Christina is the tutor agent and is the instructor.
Hi, Kenya and Jordan. My name is Christina and I'll be your instructor for this activity.
Jordan is a peer student agent and learns with the digital agents hold three-way conversations with the adult learner and help them to navigate the online experience. Christina.
Two agents, not two videos.
Okay, yeah, we fixed it. Okay, let's try it again.
So it makes learning less boring. Right? So I learn with a tutor and also there's a learning companion. It's a kind of avatar.
The Auto Tutor project is an intelligent tutoring system that helps adults with
this activity.
Jordan is a peer student agent and learns with the participant.
Hi, Kenya. I'll be learning with you today.
They give reading comprehension instructions, present information, and ask questions to assess the learner's understanding. The agents are adaptive to the learner's actions. Sometimes Jordan and the adult learner engage in a game competition, or the adult learner may choose to help the peer agent. The 36 lessons cover a variety of topics and focus on words, sentences, text, and digital resources. Each lesson is devoted to a particular comprehension strategy. First, the user selects a lesson and a name. Then they watch a short 2 or 3 minute video that reviews the lesson content. This refreshes the learner on key concepts and terms for the lesson. Activities are carried out with the agent's guidance and visual and verbal feedback is given. They explain why answers are right or wrong and help to fill in gaps of information. The learner interacts with the digital platform using multiple choice button clicks and by dragging and dropping an answer. The adult takes turns with the peer agent. Here is an example of a word level lesson. A sentence level, a text level, and one at the digital level. Auto-tutor lessons are based on practical content that is valuable and motivating for adult learners. Each lesson is designed to be intuitive and typically takes 20 to 50 minutes to complete. Lessons can be selected in any order and be repeated. The scores of the human learner are shown. An individual learner's assessment is given in a performance grid. The teacher can scroll down for more information. AutoTutor integrates digital technology, reading skills, and comprehension strategies. It was created to improve both important literacy skills and digital skills for adult learners. AutoTutor is an intuitive digital educational tool. It was designed to improve reading comprehension in adults with low literacy skills.
So I invite my colleague Longkai to show a demo of AutoTutor. It's applied in different domains, and a lot of the AutoTutor developer is funded by the Office of Naval Research. So they want to teach electronics to naval officers.
Okay. Okay, so I'm here to show you a demo. So this IKS was developed in Memphis, university. So we want to see how an Flutter tutor can actually works for a student. So we want to know about how it looks like and how it can help students learn, and we can see what kind of feedback you can have. And this is an electronics tutor. It helps students to learn about electronics. It's about physics. So we can go to this website and we can log in with my just any account. Yeah, any account. Okay. So here, I think firstly, it will just to provide you an introduction of what's the basics of
This video is just the basics about electronic components, what they look like and what they actually do, and how they work, in fact.
So you will know about
let's start with one of the
what is kind of different different components that might be used in the circuits, and it just shows this kind of video. And then after the students have seen this video, then the students can go inside. And then when they are ready, they just go inside, and they want to go to this interface. So this is a so-called push-pull amplifier circuit. So this is, I don't know how many physics teachers are here today. And yeah, physics, because I'm not a fair expert. So I don't want to say something wrong here. So I think if you know here, there are kind of basically there are two transformers, T1 and T2, and two transistors, QA and QB. Okay, and then we can see what happens here. Can I use my own computer? I think this one, this version may not be. Oh, okay. I think something is wrong here.
Carl, next let's learn about push-pull amplifiers.
Doesn't a push-pull amplifier use two transistors?
Right. The transistors work one at a time to create the output signal. Let's begin by looking at the figure and considering the current. If the positive half cycle in the input signal is at the positive terminal of transformer T1, why would transistor be stopped conducting?
So this is a question. So this question is so-called expectation. So then you want to set your response, the student's response here. And here I can just input my correct one and then it stops. But if I input the wrong answers, it will trigger the mechanism.
If you miss the audio, you can see the text.
Yeah.
I show them the text there.
I think this one is. Yeah.
Carl, next let's learn about push-pull amplifiers.
Doesn't a push-pull amplifier use two transistors?
Right. The transistors work one at a time to create the output signal. Let's begin by looking at the figure and considering the current. If the positive half cycle in the input signal is at the positive terminal of transformer T1, why would transistor be stopped conducting?
Okay. So it's okay. So I think the physics teacher can answer this question, right? I think there should be an input box here. I can input the answer, but I think it doesn't show up. It's something wrong with this. Okay. I think it doesn't matter, but I can just show you here. So this is a push-pull amplifier, and it's like the two transistors. Okay, one transistor is trying to go on a positive half cycle. One is the negative half cycle. And then here, this is the question. So the teacher, the computer tutor has asked it to the student, and then I have already tried to answer this question. So this is all this kind of automated, generated dialogue, and you can see what will be happening in the dialogue. So so it is supposed to put on a positive half cycle. But if I try to put on a negative half cycle, this is a wrong answer. Okay, and then this kind of the teacher will try to help me. This will help, and it is trying to give some scaffolding to me and to see where is the negative potential during the positive half cycle of the input. I answered QA. QA is also a wrong answer, right? It's a wrong. And then he also sees this kind of misconception. And then he wants to convince me again. Okay, try this again. Or during the positive half cycle, the negative potential is at the basic of which transistor? It is try to push me to think hard. And then what we can see here is like finally I answered it right. Finally, so I answered QB, and then the other tutor also feel released. Well, the two tutors feel released. Okay, I feel like this is right. It is excellent, encouraging me. So this is what we can see. The dialogue happens between the student and the two computer tutors, and these two tutors then again they will be like try to consolidate my understanding. Not just stop there. They try to give me some more explanations why I have answered it right. What's the rationale? So it gives some more explanation there, and try encouraging me and try to
to see this is a good point, then the student can learn from this kind of dialogic learning. Because I just read from a report from NIE, it says that the dialogic learning is still a very important mechanism for students to achieve 21st century learning. So that's still a key mechanism. So here we can see the dialogue, the tutor-student dialogue happens in this kind of automated way. So here we can see that this is what we have learned from this system. We can get the student to express a level of expectations when the main questions is asked. I think the main way is try to the computer, the machine is able to analyze the student input. It try to match with the so-called student model. Whatever the student input in the box will be compared to the student model or pedagogical model to do some match, and then it will the tutor will be providing you a certain of so-called adapted feedback to the students. And then rather than simply nurturing, this is not just about nurturing, but try to provide some scaffolding. When you find you have certain kind of misconceptions, and try to provide certain scaffoldings, some kind of encouraging you to think harder. And then this kind of misconceptions are good. Actually are good. If I answer it right, it just stops there. No more responses, no more other things, because it assumes you already understand that kind of point. And here, then when the student content has a high match to the misconception, admitter will acknowledge the error and provide you the correct information. So this is a kind of a posture, a kind of way try to establish such a tutor-student interaction. So that's what we have learned from this kind of system. Whether even we cannot show it off in this kind of environment, but we can see whether this approach is really feasible in Singapore. Can it be a replacement of real teachers? What do you think?
Because you see, they feel relieved that I imagine that this is correct. You know, it doesn't sound like it's very relieved.
It sounds like a trick question. Question sounds like a trick because you can't say yes.
Yeah, you mean that the tutor should like the articulation from the tutor should be more emotional, right? Wow, you're good. You're so good.
It doesn't have to replace the teacher. You need to use online learning, e-learning to our situation.
I can imagine it working with kids to some extent because of the novelty factor. I get interested. You can imagine having two computer agents guiding a kid through maybe language exercises, right? So the one show. I think main problem is that there's still that listening comprehension going on. So you can't ignore things like the pace of the speech. Because it's text-to-speech, right? It's automatic. So you probably would have to customize and calibrate the pacing of the speech. There are some things that became difficult for me to understand because of the speech, the pausing isn't like a normal human's. Normally, also when you have your speech, right, it's broken up in chunks that have peaks, several peaks. So the computer isn't doing that. It's just one stream of words. So these things are contributing to a state of confusion in the student. So especially if your kids are increasingly second language learners, right? I think this is going to come time to play. Right? So it's something we need to address if we were to adopt an approach like that for a platform.
So a lot of it's the user interface issues. Besides the audio, actually you can see the text transcript. I ask you to show the text transcript of
I think currently, actually, this kind of text-to-speech technology has been much more advanced for currently. So because I have tried different kind of so-called engines, I can hear some really voices you cannot distinguish from the real one and the fake one. Yeah.
So I'll just add to that. Definitely deepfakes, we hear a lot in the news, so these systems are getting better. Definitely they are starting to pay attention to what we call prosody, like the pausing between words and the intonation. That matters a lot. Even for things where we think there should be more interjection, we can, for example, augment the ITS with recorded clips. Right? So it's really up to us to decide what level of automation. I think the other thing that's really interesting about the auto tutor approach is it's like Longkai said, it's a dialogic system. So it employs a virtual peer, and that peer mixes up the instruction strategy and it produces a very different type of effect. So as a person structuring the ITS, you may decide, okay, which content units are better presented by a peer, which are better coming from the lecturer, right? The lecturer is always supposed to be a source of truth, right? But when you want to guide a person to understand the misconceptions, maybe it's good to have a peer show that, right? And then you can ask the student, do you agree with what your peer, your virtual peer said, right? This can be a way of helping the peer teach the concept as well, right? So we can use all of these strategies even for a high-performing student. Like say, Longkai said, oh, if I answer correctly, the conversation's over. Well, that's the case in this particular scenario. It doesn't have to be. You can say, well, that was very good. Then turn to the virtual peer and say, well, how about this problem? How would you solve this problem? And then the virtual peer can make a mistake. And then the teacher can say, what do you think? Do you agree with that or not, right? So there's a way of dealing with different levels of expertise, even for these types of stuff. But unfortunately, there's no way we can get around the cost of the development. That's unfortunate, yes.
Yeah. The learning companion itself is a pedagogical strategy. So in the old China days, the emperor actually employed learning companions for the prince, right? So it's the same idea. So those are ITS where there's an agent that teaches, and there might be other agents to kind of provide a different opinion and try to provide some cognitive dissonance. So before I hand back to Ming-Yan, I want to say that there are other approaches to using AI in education. So one of them is teachable agents. So most of the time it's the tutoring, right? The system tutors me in something. System tutor. What if we flip it over? We teachers say that we learn a lot. We can learn by teaching, right? Yeah, we can learn by teaching. So this is the same approach. So as a student, I'll teach Betty about some concepts. So I teach about the causes of rainfall, for example, in geography or irrigation. So I draw a concept map and teaches Betty. And then Betty will use my knowledge in this concept map and try to solve some problems of quiz. So that's the idea. So if Betty messes up, can't solve those problems, then I reflect, what is it I taught Betty that doesn't allow her to answer those questions? So I try to come back and tweak and reteach Betty. So that's the idea, learn by teaching. And you can use it for interesting ways. So you could have a kind of a, TV quiz, right? Instead of you going to the participate in the TV quiz and answer the question, you teach an agent. So let every student in the class teach an agent, and all these agents go and compete in some kind of quiz. I think that would be very exciting for the kids. So there's another approach called teachable agents.
So if you don't want to invest 200 hours of time, you ask the students to build the map for you, and then they can be the ones informing the ITS system. I'm half joking, but that's part of the idea, is to flip the coin on itself, right? Get the students to teach themselves.
So these are suitable for domains where the nature of knowledge would be like concept map, like I don't know, maybe social studies, geography, where there are semantics in the links, so you want to get students to learn by teaching. So that's the intro to ITS. So how shall we proceed, Damien?
Yeah, I think it's a good time for a break. It's exactly 2:30. So rather than bore you with more lecture slides on the meta results of a lot of ITS studies, I think we can break now. And then Longkai, myself, and Chee, we can entertain your questions over tea. And so we'll start promptly in about 15 minutes time. Okay. So at 2:45 we'll come back, and then depending on how we do, we can do a short part of the meta-analysis, but actually we want to get feedback from you so that we can start the consultation dialogues that are more group-based. Okay, not today, but yeah, we get started on that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So we'll take a break now. Okay, so we're going to finally end the session. So I think we had a good dialogue for the second half, and I hope I learned a lot from all of you in conversing with you. But I think this is just the beginning, as they like to say. So we want to invest, NIE as well as NTU as well as NUS want to invest in a partnership with MOE. Because we have a mission, to make impact the primary research that we do at all our institutions, and for it to affect our learners. Many of us have school children or had school children and want to make an impact. So, there are lots of different things that I thought that would be relevant, and so this comes at the same point from the slides that Chee was showing earlier. This is about AI in education, as I think you all know, there's a call from AI Singapore to invest in AI in education. And so that report of Intelligence Unleashed was talking to that. So, they're talking about, within 15 years of time from now, what types of jobs are going to be created. So they're not just thinking of K through 12 and what MOE is usually primarily tasked with, but, adult education as responsible for SSG. I also work with SSG a little bit, right? And they say here, what are the goals? How AI in education can help? Well, to give every learner their personal tutor. That's ideal, right? And provide every teacher with their own AI teaching assistant. We haven't talked about that as much, but that's even more important if we want to scale our teaching staff, right? I mean, we care about our students, but we care about our teachers too, right? Okay, and to be able to deliver timely teacher professional development, right, for PD, and to help parents be a part of this program. So we haven't really talked about these issues, but I hope in our subsequent dialogues with each of the units that we cover these as well, because I think our dialogue with you and eventually the SLS team and the vendors that you will be using to accomplish some of these missions will be paramount to the success of the next generation. Okay, so there will be other subsequent follow-ups that we'll probably do with consultancy with your management group. So please feed back to your management that this workshop was helpful. And we will look forward to having more of a dialogue with you again on probably a more personal one-on-one basis or one on a team, okay, so that we can help to help you go through the proposals that have been made by the vendors or by SLS, or that you want to come up with, that you want to recommend to the SLS team or the vendors team, okay? Again, we're primarily researchers. We know the area from the ivory tower view, but not necessarily from the ground. This is where we need your information. So I think as a partnership, that's all I have to say. I'll turn it over to Chee and Longkai for any last words.
Chee, you said it all. So we cover the basic concepts. If you can chew on it, and there's some resources out there. Access about handling those resources. So you can try out the auto tutor. There's also another tutor is quite famous. It's called the ND's tutor. Maybe some of you know it's for teaching physics. So check out some of these tutors so that there's some familiarity. And see how these concepts can help you to build on the kind of things you want to do. Listen to some of the groups, you want to build a curriculum map, believe the curriculum map, tapping on the resources on the SLS, right? So how can you really leverage on these resources in the SLS? Now these resources could be ITS, right? So really making use AI to see how we can do things in a very different way. So it's an exciting journey. I like to be of help to be doing this journey. So I've been in this field for a long time. I built my ITS in the 1980s. As I told this group, I teach Pascal programming, old programming languages, to teach Prolog programming. So ITS went through ups and downs. Last time AI was very hot, and a lot of promises. The .com day, and then there was a time when AI, the interest died down. So people pretend they're not doing AI. But now it's so hot now, everybody said we are doing AI. We are a startup. So we have been in this field quite a while, so we probably can share with you our sense of what works, what doesn't work, and attack on the international networks we also have. So in preparing for this, we actually spent a lot of time. We talked to Arthur Grazer, who started Auto Tutor, to let us know these resources. So we hope that those will be useful for you as practitioners, really trying to stretch the envelope of how AI can really improve education. A lot of people in naive views, they jump on the board and think that AI can really transform teaching environments. But as you see, it's really about human-machine symbiosis. Human is very good at doing all kind of teaching. The machine is very good at computational grinding, computational speed, and processing a lot of data, learning analytics. So it is in this symbiosis we try to find out how we can really leverage on AI. So so Chee, what is thoughts, and really think about how we can use AI to help you in this curriculum map, this progression map, and maybe develop some of the kind of learning objects that they can see on SLS. So okay.
So I'm the guy who pretended to be an AI man, and now I have to admit I'm an AI man. So I think now it's really we can see the reverse of AI in days. But as you mentioned, it has really still a lot of limitations. You cannot see like AI can really bring the motivation. Some students may get engaged, excited, some may not, because it's kind of like somebody will say this kind of interaction with AI is still too mechanical. So it's not like so natural, right? And still with emotions, it is still with kind of human interactions to help students learn. So we have to admit all these kind of limitations, but we can also try to admit the still huge potentials of AI education. Just like a few years ago, we